Gagnon. Today is December 18th, 1991. Right now, the general mood in the country is one of growing anxiety about the future. Republican George Bush is President of the United States. His approval ratings in opinion polls have fallen from previously high levels as a result of breaking his No New Taxes campaign promise and making light of the country's recession. His strong points seem to lie in foreign rather than domestic affairs. Most Americans are optimistic about their own lives, although concerned about the weak economy and somewhat worried about the future of the country. It's a time of great advances in technology, but also of skepticism about the side effects, such as pollution. The world is basically at peace right now. The war in the Gulf is over, and concern about nuclear war is lower than it's been in many years. Communism is crumbling as the Soviet Union breaks down and lowers its flag for the final time on New Year's Eve. After 8 years of growth, the United States economy seems to be slowing, and many people are being affected by the deepening recession. More people are homeless. Illegal drugs and drug-related crimes are considered to be one of the nation's major concerns. The pollution of our environment is getting worse, and there are growing concerns about the greenhouse effect and the destruction of the ozone layer. The number of people affected with the incurable disease, AIDS, is rising, and the explanation for cancer still seems a long way off. To sum it up, it seems that although we are living in a time of peace, our future seems uncertain due to hard economic times, instability in the politics of the West, and the AIDS epidemic that grows larger every day. We must truly concern ourselves with the future of this nation and of the world around us. Blanche Gagnon will celebrate her 86th birthday next month. She currently resides at the Teresian House, a nursing home on Washington Avenue in Albany, New York. Mim has 4 children, 11 grandchildren, and 8 great-grandchildren, with a 9th on the way. Well, here we go, Mim. Welcome. We're so glad to be doing this interview with you today. I'm going to ask you a few questions, like, what is your full name?
My full name. I was baptized Blanche Lorette Belanger. Although I never liked the name Lorette and I never used it. And then, of course, I married, so my full name now is Blanche Belanger Gagnon.
Right. Is there anything special or unusual about the way you were named?
No.
When and where were you born?
I was born in Cohoes, number 5 Strong Place, which is off of Elite Street in Cohoes.
Okay. And what was the date?
January 6th.
1906. 6, wow, okay. So that would make you 86.
Yeah.
Brothers and sisters that you had or have, what are their names?
I had 2 sisters, although the first one died when she was only 2 months old. Her name was Margaret. None of us ever knew her, but my mother spoke of her quite often. Then I had, our second child was Clarence. He was born, do you want the dates?
Sure.
Yeah, well, my mother was married in 1901. Then she had a little girl in 1902. 1903 she had Clarence. Then in 1904 she had my brother Leo. 1906 I was born. 1908 my brother Achille, we always called him Archie, he was born. Then in 1910 my brother Louis was born. And in 1916, yeah, those 5 years, 1915, my brother Marcel was born. 2 years later, my sister Seal. And 2 years after that, my brother, they named him Jeffrey Lionel, but we always called him Pete.
Why did you call him Pete?
Because Jeffrey, I don't know, it was, and Lionel, we didn't like that either. When he was christened, I said to my mother, why give him those names? They're but his godmother and godfather wanted those names, and we never used them. We always called him Pete.
What were your parents' names?
Well, my mother was christened Valida, but she was always named Ida after that. Valida Gallery. And my father was Israel Blanche. Now, my mother's mother's name was Delima Marcellet. They came from Joliet. And my grandfather's name was Delphus Gallery. He came from Champlain. It was Delia Peltier. And his father's name was Israel. Now, she came from Saint-Mélanie in Canada, and he came from Saint-Jean-Mateau. Now, these places I visited after I got married and went to Canada. I visited where they were born.
That's interesting. When were your parents born? Do you know?
Yes. My mother was born September 7th, and his birthday is December 10th. Now, let me see what year she was born. She was 25 when I was born. I was 1906. 25 years from 1906 is 1881. 1881.
Yeah. Huh.
And they were both born in 1881.
Wow.
She was older by 3 months. She was born in September. He was born in December.
What were your parents' occupations?
When they were in their teens, they met when they were 17 or 18. They both worked in the Harmony Mills. In those days, most everybody in the Harmony Mills came from Canada, and they met at work. He was a weaver, and she was she worked in a different department. I can't remember now what her work was, but that's where they met anyway. But after they got married, she never worked. Mm-hmm. And when he started raising a family, he learned the carpentry trade, and he became a carpenter. And he always said, none of my children will ever work in the Harmony Mills, and none of his ever did.
He didn't like it?
No. He had four of his boys most of his boys learned a trade. A couple were plumbers, a couple were carpenters.
Did you know your grandparents, which you said you had, but what can you tell us about them?
Oh, I knew them very well. My grandmother, my grandfather, Belanger, was a woodsman. And they lived on Cataract Street near the Harmony Mills. And he would leave in the fall, and he cut lumber up and around Saratoga. In those days, it was owned by some big company, and he would leave in the fall and come back the next spring. He was gone all winter. They didn't come home in the winter time. They did their own cooking, and they lived right there. So I never saw him in the winter. But when he come home in the spring, he didn't work all summer long. Their work was winter. Luther's Forest.
Really?
That's where he worked. Huh. Luther's. They owned all that up around Saratoga there. Yeah. And it was a big deal going up there. I remember my mother had pictures of she and my father and my uncle and his girlfriend. They had rented a wagon, a carriage, and it took a day and went up to see him and come back that night. And that was a big, big outing.
Sure.
So she had pictures of that. And Grandma, after her children were gone, she went to work in the Harmony Mills as a sweeper. She was very industrious. She was small and very quick and moved around very fast. And she enjoyed that. And she lived right near there, so it didn't matter to her. Now, I used to spend a lot of time there all summer long. I would leave Friday after school and stay with her till Monday morning. Then she would send me back up home to go to school. So I spent a lot of time with her.
Can you go further back than your grandparents and remember your great-grandparents? Or
Well, my great-grandmother, Grandma Belanger's mother, who lived in St. Melanie, her name was Esther Peltier. And I remember her because I went to see her when I got married also. I went to Canada on my honeymoon. And she came to go, she was 80-some years old when Austin was born. And she was in Cohoes, and that was 5 generations. She was visiting my grandmother. My grandmother was 2. My father was a 3rd. Myself and Austin was the 5th. And she had come on the train all by herself. She was very wiry, very... in fact, Grandma used to say, "Oh, when my mother comes, she tires me out. She wants to go to the movies. She wants to." Oh, they used to go to the movies every day.
What age did she live to? Do you remember?
In her late 80s. Yeah.
And what about your grandmother?
She was in her 80s when she died. Yeah.
Your mother too?
My mother also. Yeah.
Longevity.
Yes. Yes.
What is your ethnic origin, and how has it affected your life?
My ethnic origin is French Canadian. Well, I think it affected my life. I'm very proud of my French Canadian origin, and I always went to a French school. In fact, we learned French before we learned English. Sisters of St. Anne. We had half-day French, half-day English. And we learned, we had the history of France, history of Canada. I loved history of Canada. And then I liked their way of life and their cooking. They were all very good cooks. So I learned to cook their way, and I liked it, yes.
Were there any unusual events or famous people in our family?
In our family,
Well known for anything?
no, nothing unusual. Only on your grandfather's side, they claim he came from one of his ancestors had been knighted by King Louis, but I don't know too much about that. But and Gagnon means, I think they had, this ancestor had gone to war for King Louis, and they knighted him, and Gagnon means we win. So
they won.
Yeah.
Okay. Now, I'd like you to think back to the earliest thing you can remember.
Oh, I remember my brother Archie was 2 years old. So, was a baby rather. So I was 2 years old, and I remember Mother had a cradle, little wooden cradle that rocked back and forth. And one day she had company to come in to see the new baby. And he was a beautiful baby, very fair, pink cheeks, very blonde hair. And they all stood around the cradle admiring him. How beautiful, what a beautiful baby. And they turned their back, and I took that cradle and turned it upside down, and he fell on the floor with the mattress on top of him. And that's very vivid in my memory.
Isn't that? And you were 2.
I was 2.
Isn't that something?
Yeah.
Do you remember anything else before you went to school? That age?
Yes, I remember a lot of things. Then I have a little scar here. Mother had a sideboard, and there was something up on that sideboard that I wanted. So I climbed up, and there was a small knife on it, and I picked it up and fell, and it went through my lip. And it left a scar. I still have it. And I remember my mother was so nervous about it, but there was no doctor or anything. No. She just put something on it and put me to bed, and that was it.
When you were little, where did you live? You said in Cohoes, but where, and what did your house look like?
Well, they were company houses, Harmony Mill houses. And the one on Strong Place was, we only had 2 rooms. We lived in the back. They had 2 rooms in the front and 2 bedrooms. 2 rooms in the back and 2 bedrooms. And we lived there until, in fact, four of us were born there. Archie was born there, and when he was little, we moved on Garner Street, number 40, upstairs. And from there, Louis was born there. Then after that, we moved at number 42 downstairs. So Marcel and Seal and Pete were born Pete was born after we left the hill. Yeah, when I was 14, we bought a house on Erie Street, down in the, where you know where we lived on Erie Street. And that's where Pete was born.
You go to elementary school.
St. Marie's.
And what year did you start?
Well, I started when I was 5 years old. But I did go to public school kindergarten when I was 4 on Garner Street.
Now, was that before elementary school?
Yeah.
So, okay, Mim. I'd like you to think back to an incident in grade school which you remember well. And tell me what was going on.
Well, I remember very well that because I could sing, the nuns had taken me under their wing. And they taught me to sing and play the piano. And most every day they would say after school, come to the convent and we'll practice a play. We had plays then, not like today, but every month we had some kind of a play, either in French or English. And I was always the first one that they would recruit. So that I spent a lot of times with the nun.
Any other vivid memories of the elementary school years?
No, the only that it was a very pleasant, I enjoyed school, I liked it.
How were your grades?
Very good.
They were good?
Yes, I was always first in the spelling bee, or geography, or history. And I was very competitive. I wanted to be first. So my father would ask the questions at night. He enjoyed that. Yeah, I'd say, we go through this paragraph, so he would listen to them.
How did you spend your summers during grade school?
Well, when I was 10 and Marcel was born, I spent my summers taking care of children. Of course, there was a playground not far from my house, and I would put him in the carriage and bring him with me. Then 2 years later, when Seal came, he would hang on to the carriage, and I'd put her in the carriage, and I'd bring the two of them to the playground. And that's, if I went out, I had to take the children, because my mother sewed, she made all our clothes, and it was my job to look after the children.
Did you have any pets when you were small?
Pets? We always had a cat.
Yep.
Always, yeah.
When you were growing up, did you have any sense of whether your family was rich or poor? And what would you say about the economic circumstances of growing up?
Well, when I was growing up, I knew we weren't rich, but we didn't suffer from not being rich, because Mother was a very good cook and Father was a good provider, and he always said, we always sat at the table all together, and we never ate any differently than he did. I know some fathers, the steak was for him, or the best, not us. He'd say, give the children anything they want to eat and put it on the table. Just don't waste it. And I was the best dressed girl on the street, because she would make clothes over. My aunts would give her dresses or coats, and she would make a new coat for me with a fur collar or fur muff. And she also made all the boys their clothes, so that then we had curtains where other families didn't have curtains. And I had some friends who had no sheets or pillowcases. And my mother would take a piece of muslin and 4 or 5 pieces and make a sheet. And we had pillowcases with lace around it, which was very unusual on our street.
Moving up to high school, let's see, when and what years did you go, if you can remember? And you lived on Garner Street through all this time?
Yes, well, I lived on Garner Street when I finished the 8th grade at St. Marie's. Then I went to St. Joseph's Academy. I was 12 years old when I entered high school. And I took up, at noontime, when I had a few minutes, I took up typing. And then, of course, I had French and English there also. I loved French. In fact, in those days, you had to have 4 years language, a foreign language. And when I was in the 9th grade, they gave out, I was to take my first year high school French, and the nun ran out of papers, so she said, here's one the 4th year. Just fool around with it, and when I get in one of the first year, I'll give it to you. So I took the 4th year, and I finished it myself and another boy by the name of Everest Roy. He became a pharmacist. So we filled in the 4th year French and handed it in, and she says, oh my goodness, she says, you both passed this, you won't have to take your first year. So we were all finished.
Wow. Do you, who were your friends, your best friends during high school? Do you have any that you keep in contact with now? Or?
I really, now when I was on Garner Street, I had a best friend. One girl who lived next door, her name was Corinne Bonneau. We were together all the time. But then when I moved where I am, where we did move, well, I used to go and see the Fortin girls. And I had friends all over all the time. And then we would have, once a week, we'd meet at somebody's house. They would, every 2 or 3 weeks, they'd come to my house, and Mother would make sandwiches or bake a cake or something, and it was nice. Then we went to the Fortins, because they had a piano. And of course, I could sing, so especially on Sunday night, we would congregate there and sing and enjoy ourselves.
Okay, we're going to get personal now. Who was the first boy you ever dated? And how old were you, and what were the circumstances? Just the first, if you can remember.
Oh, the first one, let me see. I had a lot of boys who used to walk me home, but I didn't dare date. My father would have killed me. He was, no, they were very, very strict about that. So I really, well, I did go with a boy before I met my husband, because I met him when I was 17. So before that, I met one from Waterford. His name was Adelard. And I went with him maybe 3 months. But then I got tired of that, so I told him not to come back. Then I met your grandfather.
If you could have changed one thing about your high school years, what would it have been?
I don't think I would have changed anything. I was perfectly satisfied no matter what I did. I was able to cope, and no, I feel that I had a very good life, and I was very satisfied.
What were your family vacations like?
Oh, we didn't have any vacations.
You never went on vacation?
No. But the year that I met your grandfather, they used to, he had an aunt in Massachusetts, he had a sister in Brooklyn, and they used to go a lot. And that year, they took 2 weeks. He took his mother to see her sister in Massachusetts. He could drive. So he said to her, I want to bring my girlfriend. And she said, oh no, you can't do that. He said, okay, then I won't drive you. So she said, well, I suppose if you must, you must. So then his sister came with us, and his brother-in-law, and his sister-in-law, and myself for 2 weeks. But of course, he had to ask my mother and father.
I was going to say, your parents let you go.
Well, now they wanted to know who was going and where we were going. So he said, my mother's coming, not my father. And he said, they'll look after her. So it was very enjoyable. I had a good time.
How would you sum up your childhood and your adolescence?
Well, as I just said, I had a very nice childhood. And I had a father who was very strict, but he never touched us. Mm-hmm. All he had to do was raise his voice, and we feared him, and he was the father, and we did as he said, but he wasn't that demanding either, and he was very good to us, very good. And my childhood was and my adolescence was very good. Well, I was out a lot singing, I was invited to a lot of parties, and we put on a lot of plays, so that I had something going all the time.
Okay, we're going to shift gears here and talk about World War I and the Great Depression of the 30s. World War I, what impact, if any, did it have on your life?
It didn't have much of an impact, only that I had 3 uncles who went overseas, and my father's 3 brothers. And one of them, because he could speak French and English, he was stationed in Germany in a post office there. And he learned German. He was very good at languages, and they kept him 2 years after war was finished. And that's where I got that picture of the castle on the Rhine.
Right.
He had sent me a postal card when he was over there. And when I got married, he had a friend of his make the painting of that postal card because I had admired it so much. Little did I think that years later I would go and see that same castle.
What impact did the Depression of the 30s have on you or your family?
Didn't have any impact on us because Dad worked, my husband worked all during the Depression. He had a steady job, so we didn't feel it.
Did you attend college or vocational schools at all?
No, but I did attend. I don't think I even ever talked about it. I did go to the school of. I studied vocal. Yeah, I took vocal lessons.
Voice lessons?
Yeah, in Troy Conservatory of Music.
Huh.
Yeah.
For how long?
For a couple of years.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And this was after high school?
After high school, while I was going with Dad, and after I got married.
Not going to college?
Yes, I do, because the opportunities today, of course, we didn't have the opportunities then that you people have now. Mm-hmm. But I feel that at school, at high school, we had history of Greece, and we had history of this, history of that. I hated history of Greece, but I took it anyway. And but I feel that I learned with my vocal lessons, music lessons, and my French lessons, that I learned almost as much as if I had gone to college. And I was an avid reader. If I took a book upstairs to read when I went to bed, I didn't put it down till I had read the whole thing, sometimes 3 o'clock in the morning. In fact, I have a little story about that. My mother noticed that I was going to bed late, so she said to me, "Now don't do that again. You go upstairs, put your light out early. Don't read till 3 o'clock in the morning." So she called me one night at 3 o'clock and my light was still on. So she took that book and burned it. And it didn't belong to me. I was so mad, but I felt terrible. I don't know how I got out of that one.
How old were you, and what were you doing at the beginning of World War II? Pearl Harbor.
World War II. Oh, I was married. That's when, that was in 1942. 42? Oh, sure, that's the year that we went out to our store. And I had a nephew who was killed during that war, and a cousin who was killed during that war. And I had just opened my store. Yes, I remember that very well.
Did the war have any impact on your life or the store, or
no
things that you could sell or couldn't sell?
No, well, we were rationed and all that, but no, we made out all right, yes. No, it didn't have any impact. And of course I had 5 brothers in the Navy at that time, all together.
When did you leave home, and what circumstances did you leave under?
When did I leave home? When I got married.
And you were
18.
18. And where did you go the first time?
Our first apartment was down on Lancaster Street. 3 rooms and 3 bedrooms and bath. Very nice place. We lived there 6 months, and we paid $25 a month rent, which was high then. but then my father-in-law, he thought we were paying too much rent, so he knew of a place on the island, on Bridge Avenue, near their home, and he rented. He asked if we wanted to move in there for $17 a month. So we took that one, and we stayed there for 3 years. And then we moved. Dad's sister Josie, who was a cripple, lost her husband, and her flat upstairs was for rent. So we moved there to help her, because Dad used to mow her lawn and do her shopping and all that. She couldn't walk, and she had that little girl, Joan. So then just before, we were upstairs until Paul was born. Let me see, up there, your father Austin was born while we were there. So was Anita and Paul. And when Paul was 3 months old and she died, she sold us that house and we moved downstairs. You know where that is?
Yep.
Yeah.
What was your first job after you left home?
After I left home, I worked in where they made washcloths. And I loved it. You scalloped the edging, a shell around it. And I was only 14 years old. I didn't leave home.
Oh, right.
I worked during the summer. And like I said, you could get a job. If I could leave there at 12 o'clock and go across the way and get a job at 1 and start a new job right away. There was loads of work.
What did you do after that?
Then I went to work for a lawyer, John Ring, receptionist, typist.
And then, do you remember?
And then it was funny about work. Oh, and then I worked in Healy's ice cream parlor on Remsen Street. I didn't dish ice cream. That was a fella that did that. But I sold homemade chocolates, and it was a very, very high, handmade chocolates and all that. And what was very funny, first thing I did when I went in there, she gave me a piece of felt, and she said, now take the tray of chocolates and wipe them all off. Because they get dull.
Yeah.
And every morning you had to wipe them off. They were on the big trays.
Huh.
Oh, then she said to me, you can have ice cream, as much as you wanted. Well, the first few days, I had quite a bit of ice cream. Then I got so I couldn't look at ice cream or chocolates.
Oh. When did you start the store now?
In 1942.
And that was, would you call that mainly your career? Was the store? What would you call your career?
Oh, that was my career then, yes. And we with the store came our apartment. So we moved we sold our place on the island and moved to this to the store on Manor Avenue. And then we signed a lease with an option of buying, because we heard he would eventually want to buy it. So I made up the option myself and had him sign it. He wanted $6,000 for it. So I thought, well, I'll make him sign that, because if I decide to stay, he's liable to, if he sees I'm doing a good business, he'll up the price, because he was very tricky. And sure enough, 6 months later, I bought it.
For $6,000.
Yeah.
Boy. Political views.
Yeah.
The last time you voted in a presidential election, whom did you vote for and why?
I voted for a Democrat, because all my life I voted Democrat. But now and then a friend of mine or somebody I did like, I would vote for, but never a president. And I don't think I ever voted for a Republican governor either. And I would never vote for Reagan or Nixon or now Bush. So I haven't. But this year, I did vote an all-Republican ticket. Of course, it wasn't. I liked Hoblock, and whoever was running this year, I did like. So I voted. But it didn't hurt me a bit.
No.
No.
What was your husband's full name? When did you meet him, and where?
Well, I met him in 1923 in May. My dentist, who was also a musician, and he was our choir director. I always sang in the choir, and this was when I was at St. Joseph's. And he put on plays very often for different churches. So one day he said to me, Blanche, I'm going to put on a play for Sacred Heart Church on the island, and I'd like you to come to rehearsals and be in it. So I said, sure, fine. Sunday afternoon. So I went down to their hall on Sunday afternoon, and there was a crowd of teenagers, boys and girls. I was 17. And it was nice because you met a lot of your peer, and you had a lot of fun practicing. And then the pianist, I had taken piano lessons from her, and she was the organist at Sacred Heart, and she knew Austin. So they gave me a solo to do, and then they wanted me to do a little dance with it, with someone. And she says, I'll get somebody to dance with you. So, okay. So Austin was standing not too far, and I thought he was kind of cute. He was cute. He was a handsome man. Dark hair, dark curly hair, big brown eyes, small features, very nice looking. So she went over and she says, how would you like to dance with Blanche? And my number was You Are My Sunshine, but not the sunshine that, not You Are My Sunshine, not that one. It was an older song. So we said, sure. So we had to rehearse dancing around on the stage. So we rehearsed, I think we gave the play in July, and we started in May. So we would every Sunday afternoon, and sometimes once at night during the week. And it was a place to go. Mm-hmm. You had a lot of fun. And then every time I went, a different fellow would walk me home. He never asked to walk me home while we were practicing. So the night, we put the show on for 2 nights. So the pianist, his name was Bob McAllister, he was a great friend of the Gagnon boys. So that night, just before we got ready to go home, the violinist had asked to walk me home, and I said yes. So after that, Bob McAllister said, Blanche, now Austin is too shy to ask you, but he'd like to walk you home. And I said, sure, okay. So then I had to send somebody else to tell the violinist that I was going to walk home with my mother and father. So, because I really preferred going home with Austin. And so we're walking home, and I turn around, and who's in back of me but the violinist? Oh. He never talked to me. So then from then on, we went, in those days you went steady. Wednesday night, Saturday night was steady night, and on Friday night, and Sunday afternoon. But Sunday night you didn't go out because you had to go to work Monday morning. But he managed somehow, like on a Monday night was the night I got together with the girls, and he'd say, well, I'm going to Clara's house. So when I come out at night, he'd be out there waiting for me. Thursday night was choir rehearsal. He knew that. I'd come out of choir rehearsal, he'd be there waiting for me. Then the other nights, every night, I saw him, every night.
How long did you date before you got married?
15 months. That was in May. I met him in May, and we got married the following August.
What would you say is the most important thing about choosing a husband?
About choosing a husband? Well, I chose him because he didn't drink, and he wasn't, you could tell he was not a womanizer because he never paid any attention. Everything was me. He never flirted or that I could see, and he was with me all the time. And he was a hard worker, and he was handsome, and he went to church, sang in the choir. So when he asked me to marry him, I thought, well, I don't think I could find a better man anywhere. So I said yes.
Was the marriage any different than you expected it was going to be?
No. Neither one of us ever said, I'm going home to Mother. Never. And neither one of us ever packed our bags or anything else. No. I had a good marriage.
Now you had 4 children in that marriage, and When were they born, and what are their full names?
Well, Austin was born I was married in 1924, August 4th, 10 o'clock in the morning, not a mass, and at St. Joseph's. Then in 1928, I was 4 years before I had your father. He was born June 1st on a Friday morning, first Friday. I can remember when we left, we had to go by Sacred Heart Church, and in those days everybody did the first Friday. Everybody was going in for first Friday, and I was going to the hospital. Then 4 years after that, in June 18th, I had Anita on a Saturday. She was born Saturday night. And 4 years after that, on a Tuesday, in August, I had Paul. Then 5 years after that, Saturday morning, in July, I had Earl.
They were all summer babies.
Yeah.
You never said Pipier's full name. What was that?
Augustin. He was baptized Augustin Viator. Viateur. Augustin Viateur Gagnon. But they didn't like Augustin, his sisters. He was their baby. And one of his sisters had a boyfriend, and he came from England. His name was Austin. So she said, why not shorten Augustin to Austin? So that's how come they called him Austin.
The day your first child was born, who was my father, what was the experience like for you?
Oh, it was terrible. I had a very hard birth, and he was a high forceps baby. I started in labor about 3 o'clock in the morning, and he wasn't born till 3 o'clock in the afternoon. It was a very hard birth. And when he was born, the forceps had left a mark here and on his forehead, over the eye. And I was so afraid that it put on his guy. I think he still has a mark in the neck where the forceps...
He does have a mark. Yeah.
Well, that was from forceps. Yeah. That one didn't go away, but the others did. But he was they were all beautiful babies. He was very fair, pink cheeks, very blonde hair, blue eyes, yeah.
What are some special memories you have of raising your children?
Well, by special memories, I never had any trouble with them, and Dad was a very good father. He would, if he had someplace to go, he'd put them all in the car and take them out. Then every Sunday we'd go for a ride and stop for ice cream, especially in Schenectady. There was a place up there, Green's. Got a great big mammoth cone for 10 cents. So just a nice ride to Schenectady, have your ice cream cone and come back home.
Did your children get along well, all of them?
Oh yes, oh yes. I would never allow them to slap one another. No, I said that was my job, not theirs.
What do you think the best thing about children is, and the worst thing the most frustrating thing about children?
I didn't find anything frustrating. No. Because to this day, none of my children ever sassed me or talked back to me. Never did. No, they did not. I didn't find anything hard. And growing up, I'd say to them, I never said, wait till your father comes home. If they did something I didn't like, I let them know it right then and there, and that was it.
What's it like being a grandparent?
Oh, wonderful. I love my grandchildren. They're wonderful, and I'm interested in everything they do. I like this little a note that I got from Linda today. I know I enjoy that. And the one that you sent me, I got a big kick out of that. And I think you're all very, very smart and very talented.
How do you feel about being a great-grandmother?
Wonderful. Wonderful. I'm thinking of this new baby, and it's funny. I visualize a little curly-haired boy.
Do you?
Yeah. Well, you know how Christopher's hair was so tightly curled. And I see this baby the same way.
It'll be interesting when the baby's born to look back on this and see.
And they say she, and I always, when I think of him, I always think, of him. See, I always say him. Yeah.
Okay, now I'd like you to move to a different subject area.
Yeah.
some of your interests. I know travel was a great interest of yours and still is,
Yeah.
and that you enjoy it. I'd like to know, in a nutshell, where you've gone, because I know that it could be.
I think I've been going, when I married Grandpa, they did a lot of traveling because they had relatives all over the place. When we were married a few months, I went to Brooklyn to see his sister, and there they brought me to the zoo. They brought me to Coney Island, Atlantic City, and Greenwich Village, and Radio City, and that was something. I had never traveled with my family because they weren't the traveling kind. Then, of course, I'd go to Massachusetts on the farm, and from there we'd go to Fiskdale and Balmer and Wells and all that, and he had a lot of relatives. Then we'd go to Canada. Then, of course, Detroit. His brother Jack had a lot of money, and we'd go to visit him for 2 weeks. He'd pay our way, like we'd take a cruise on the Great Lakes, and for 6 days, and he'd pay everything. Everything was taken care of for us. So we had a beautiful trip that way. Then, of course, I went to Europe twice. I went to Hawaii. And we bought a Winnebago, and we toured almost the whole United States and the maritime provinces in Quebec. That I enjoyed very much. The Cape Breton and that trail, the Cabot Trail, that was beautiful. And we went around the Gaspé. Oh, we did a lot of traveling. And in Europe, we visited 11 countries. And it's wonderful because I watch TV now, and they'll show you Venice. Oh, I've been there. They'll show you Naples. Oh, I've slept there. And they'll show you in England, or Amsterdam, Holland. And I have beautiful memories of all. And then I remember, we stopped at Pizza and had lunch there, right across the way from the Leaning Tower. And we've been on the Mediterranean, the Seine River in France, the Rhine River in Germany. We crossed the North Sea. We crossed the ocean. And then I've been in the Caribbean, and I crossed the Pacific Ocean. So I've seen a lot.
Now, did you take a cruise both times to Europe, or did you fly once?
No, I flew once. When I went to Belgium, I flew the Sabina, Belgium airplane. I went alone to visit a friend in Belgium, and of course I flew the same airline. But then when I went with your grandfather, we went over on the Queen Elizabeth, and that was a very beautiful trip. It was a vacation in itself, 5 days each way on the ship. Very nice. Then we toured the continent on a bus, and that was the first air-conditioned bus that had done that, so it was very comfortable and very nice.
The farm in Massachusetts, was that a family farm?
That was his aunt's farm, yes.
What would you say has been your greatest adventure thus far in travel?
Well, to me, everything was an adventure. It was something new, and it was something, like when I went to Europe, I had read so much about France and all that, and I had read a lot about England, like the war, Tale of Two Cities, and that all came back to me. I had done a lot of reading, and then I had read a lot about Rome and Italy. So, but I wish I could have gone back to on the continent to tour it. Because a lot of little things you miss.
I bet.
Yeah.
Another interest I know you have is knitting. Some of your other hobbies. What other hobbies do you have or interests?
Well, I used to sew. I used to make Anita's clothes when she was little, coats, hats, and all that. But then when I went into the store, you couldn't sit and sew and then jump up and wait on the customers. That's when I took up knitting, because I could drop it on the counter and pick it up whenever I wanted. But when you're making a seam, you can't let it go to wait on somebody. So I dropped sewing then.
What other, you have painted?
Oh,
Tell
I
us about
painted.
some of your other hobbies that you've done.
Ceramics.
Right.
I did so many ceramics. Everyone, the kids have got a bunch of stuff that I made.
And you started that later in life,
Oh, I
right?
started that after your grandfather died.
Right.
I must have been in my 70s, yeah. And I was painting. I started when I was near 80.
Organizations that you belong to? What are some of the
Oh, I belong
organizations
to a lot of organizations.
that you did?
When I was first married, I was president of the Ladies of St. Anne. I don't think they have that anymore, in the churches. And then I belonged to the Business and Professional Women's Club. And I was a volunteer at the Cohoes Hospital. I belonged to that organization. We used to go out once a week and have lunch different places. Yeah, I had a lot of things. Then when I was on the island, I belonged to a bridge club. And we played every Wednesday afternoon at the golf club. Yeah, I always did something.
Right.
Yeah.
You had said you took ceramics up after Pip had died.
Yeah.
What was the date that he passed on?
He passed on June 6, 1975.
And he was?
He was 72.
Right.
I was 69. And I was devastated, really. I cried every day. Every time I sat down to eat or got ready to go to bed. And the kids would come, Nita would come in, and she got so put out about it. So one day she said to me, now he died in June, and we had been the November before, we had joined the senior citizens, but he had never gone down there. But we did go on a trip, the Amish country, and he enjoyed it very much. Because we did go a lot, but he couldn't see like going on a bus. So just before he died, they had planned a trip to the Thousand Islands. And he said, go down and pay on, and we'll go to the Thousand Islands. So we had gone down and paid our fee to go. That was in July, but he died in June. So I said, oh, I got these two, I'll have to go down and tell them we can't make it. So Nita said, Mother, you go anyway. You got a lot of friends there, and you go anyhow. So I said, yeah, I guess I will. And I sat with Mrs. Fitzgerald, to the undertaker's mother, B, her name was. And she was very nice, very good company, and I sat with her. So, she and I both cried. She had just had a bad experience. So she and I both cried all the way on the bus. But I enjoyed the trip. It was nice. We had a nice hotel and all that. And I was glad I went. Mm-hmm. So then Anita used to bring me down every day. So that she said, Mother, you're not going to stay here and cry. Mm-hmm. I'll take you down and I'll go and get you. So when I was only there a few weeks when they needed a receptionist, and the directress said to me, Blanche, and they paid about $6 an hour. She said, how would you like to be a receptionist? I said, yes, I'd like it. So I worked as a receptionist for several years, and I took up, that's where I took up ceramics.
Ceramics, right. Yeah.
Then I took care of their books, the ceramic class. People would buy this and buy that, and I'd make out their bill, send it to the office, and they would pay at the office. So, and I made a lot of things. I enjoyed it very, very much.
And you were married 51 years?
When he died, yeah.
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 Okay, taking stock. I'd like you to take stock for a moment. At this point in time, has your life turned out as you imagined it would?
No, I never imagined that it would turn out that way. I never imagined that I would travel. And I never, because my mother, after she got married, she never even went to Canada. She never went anywhere. Oh, we brought her to Canada once when she was about 80. And we were going to the farm, and I said to her, Mother, how about, we're leaving Sunday to go on a picnic up north. You want to come? And I said to my sister, now I'm not telling her, but I'm bringing her to Canada. You get her clothes ready. So she did, and put it in the back of the car. Mother didn't know where she was going. And we got way up towards Canada, and she says, gee, when are we going to stop for our picnic? And I said, we're going to stop and eat. But we stopped, and I had made a picnic, and we kept on going. So finally we got to the now lines, and we had to tell her that we were going into Canada. So I brought her to the farm, and she enjoyed it. Yeah. That's the only time she had traveled.
Or
So I never dreamed that I would go to Europe or that I would go to Hawaii. And then, of course, I went down to Barbados. So never did I dream, in my wildest dream, did I visualize that.
what do you feel your greatest accomplishment has been this far?
Well, the first painting I made, when I was going to Our Lady of Hope, I was going every day just to get out of the house, and I ate there and all that, and I did a lot of volunteer work there. I taught knitting and crocheting, and I did a lot of knitting for them. And one day, one of the nuns, she's dead now, but she was a very great friend of mine, and she said to me, Blanche, we have an art teacher every Friday afternoon. This was Friday morning. She said, why don't you come to the class? Oh, I said, I can't draw. I said, I don't know anything about it, and I can't draw a straight line. She said, you don't have to. She said, come on and see what they're doing. So I just said, okay, I'll go. So I went in, and she said to Frances was our teacher, very lovely lady, and very talented. And she said, you're coming to paint? I said, no, I'm just going to observe, because I've never, I know that I can't. She said, how do you know? So she put a small canvas in front of me, gave me some brushes and some paints and a book. She said, now look in there, and it was a book about Europe. So she says, pick out one of whatever you think you'd like to paint. So I looked through it, and there was the Church of Assisi, St. Francis, and I had been there. I ate lunch in Assisi, and there St. Francis's church was up on top of the hill, so it was very familiar. So I said, I'll try that. So she gave me a pencil, and I detailed it with a pencil. And the nun come over, and she watched me, and she says, you never did this. I said, no, I didn't. I never did. She said, well, my goodness, you're doing very well. So I started, and that was my first picture. Come on.
And it surprised you, huh?
It surprised me, and I felt like I had done, I felt as if someone took my hand, and then the girl, activities head, when I got through with it, she found a lovely frame, and she framed it. Well, I had to kiss her, because I felt elated to think that, I said, I did that? She said, yes, you did. I said, I never dreamed that I could do that. So, then from then on, I went every week.
Yeah, and made many, many paintings.
And I made quite a few, yeah.
What about your greatest disappointment or frustration that you... Was there anything throughout your life that...
No.
No?
I never was frustrated, because I took things as they came. Hey, that's it. No. When I wanted to buy the store, I got it. And there was several other people who wanted it, but it seemed that what I wanted, I got.
Yeah.
And I never, when they spoke of liberated woman, to me that's a big laugh. I felt that I was always liberated. I always did pretty nearly what I wanted. So I don't agree with these liberated women. I think if you want to be liberated, you do it on your own. You don't have to belong to a club or join a group.
Yeah, I agree. What do you think the most important thing in your life right now is?
Right now, the most important thing is that I have a place like this to go to. Really. I wouldn't want to live with anyone and be a burden to them, because the way I was laid up here a few weeks ago, And I had all these people waiting on me, 5 doctors coming in to see me, and I feel that I'm very fortunate to be here. And I don't have to bother my children, because I know that they would feel terrible if they couldn't take care of me or if they couldn't do these things. And I don't need to ask for that help. So no, I'm very, I said I had good childhood, I had a wonderful marriage, and I've got a very good ending so far.
Yeah.
So, what more can you ask for?
What are your goals now? Or what do you want to accomplish next?
Just keep on doing what I'm doing. I'm still knitting and crocheting. Now next week I'm going to start for that new baby. Mm-hmm. I want to make him him. I want to make that new baby I've made him a little blanket and booties.
If you could do anything you wanted to do, anything, what would you do?
Travel.
Travel still?
Yeah. If I could still get around without having to be pushed around, I would love to travel.
Your predictions. What do you think the major world events will be within the next 10 years, we'll say?
Oh, the major world events. Well, I hope a breakthrough for cancer. Look at how long they've been trying for that, and it hasn't come about yet. And I hope that they find a cure for AIDS, because I feel terrible about that, because you never know, it could hit in your own family. Mm-hmm. And it's something that you can't do anything about, and it's so deadly. So I hope that they find a cure for that also.
What about political predictions, or the way you see the economy going, or
oh, I hope they turn that around too. Because right now I'm very fortunate. All of my family have good jobs. They all live well, and but you never know. Mm. If things got worse, they would feel it also.
What are some of the most important things you've learned in life thus far?
Most important things I've learned in life? Well, to take life as it comes, and don't let little things bother you and upset you. And I live from day to day. I don't think about tomorrow or next year, or just live from one day to another.
What role does religion have in your life?
It had a good role, because we were taught to do the right thing, and believe in God, and try not to commit all those mortal sins that they talk about, and that's it.
Give me some examples of right and wrong.
Right and wrong?
Yeah.
Well, it's wrong to steal from anybody. It's wrong to harm anybody. I would never deliberately hurt anyone. And right, well, try and be nice to everybody. Like it don't hurt them, and if I can't get along with someone, I just ignore them. I do. I just go right by and ignore them. That's all.
Okay, we're nearing the end of the interview now, and now we want to have some grandmotherly advice for the future generations. What advice do you have for your great-grandchildren or your grandchildren in the area of education, getting an education?
Oh, get all the education you can, because nothing beats a good education. And I've been very lucky, because all of my grandchildren so far have had a good education. Quite a few of them have gone to college, and it shows. It shows, really. And the more education, and it's going to get that even now you need more. Now, when I was going to school, When I graduated from the 8th grade, only 4 of us graduated out of a class of 30-some from the 8th grade. Because at 14 you could go to work if you had reached the 8th grade. You could get your working papers, go to work. And then I went on to high school. Very few kids. Out of those 4, 2 of us went to high school. There was 2 boys and 2 girls. Tommy Bowes and Romeo Daly, and they both died very young. Romeo became a teacher. And then the other girl, her name was Aline. She didn't go to high school. And Romeo didn't go to high school till after he got married. Then he finished high school and he became a teacher. Went to college, became a teacher.
So get as much education as you
As
can.
you can, yes.
How about choosing and managing careers? What do you think?
Choosing a career?
Yeah, or managing your career. How should you, do you feel that's important?
Well, that again depends on your schooling, I suppose, and what you like to do, and the opportunities that are available. So, I know you children were very lucky in getting your education and your careers. You're doing very well. Dale is a teacher, that's what he wanted. Donald is a policeman, he wanted that, but I think now, today, he would rather have had something else. But he'll soon be able to retire, so. No, I think that that's something that you have to look into yourself.
Mm-hmm. What advice do you have about money for them?
About money? Mm. Save as much as you can. Don't spend it all out. And they used to tell us that too. If you make $1, save at least 30 or 40 cents of that dollar. In those days, $1 was, and myself, I never spent any more than I knew that I could pay. I never went in debt. If I bought a car or something, we paid cash for it, or we knew we could pay it within a couple of months. No, I don't believe in debts.
What about love and marriage?
Love and marriage, yes. You should love a person. Otherwise, marriage is a very long, if you stick to it.
Right, or
short. Of course, the way things go today, marriage doesn't last very long. I don't think you'll see very many 50 years. Although in my family, I've been lucky. My children are all still together. Your father, 40-some years. Anita, 40-some years. Paul, 30-some years. And Earl, so I don't think we'll see any divorce in my children. Mm-hmm. I doubt it very much. They've gone too far now.
Yeah. And
things, they get along well.
How should your great-grandchildren raise their children?
Well, they should be strict. Not strict so that they beat them or anything, but when they say don't do that, mean it. Don't give in to them, say you can't go and that's it. You just can't go and that's it. Don't give them too free a hand while they're young.
Okay, ma'am, probably all of the future generations of our family will watch this tape at one time or another. Since you have the opportunity right now to address everyone, what personal message would you like to give to them?
Well, try and get along with one another. Spend as much time together as you can, because there's nothing like family. Myself, I enjoy my family so much that after Dad died, where would I have been without my family? I love my children, my grandchildren, my great-grandchildren. I love Donnie's little children. I love them all. And Linda's children, all of them. And it would be a very lonely life without them. So I enjoy their company, and I'm so pleased to be, now like when we go to Earl's all together, don't we have a lot of fun?
Oh, yeah.
Huh? We get together and we laugh and we reminisce, and I think it's so enjoyable.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. And even here they tell me, oh, you're going out again? Where are you going this time? Are you lucky? Or if I have the kids come in to see me, they say, "You're so lucky. There's some people in here never have company. All the years I've been here, or never go out." So I'm thankful that they still want to come and get me.
To close, is there anything that you feel that we didn't talk about that you'd like to mention, or anything else you need to say? Or
No, I think that covers about everything. I hope that I've made it interesting, although there are so many more things that I could talk about, little things that happened in my lifetime and all that. But I think this covers the major.
the outline?
The outline, yes. Yeah.
Well, is there anything that you wanted?
No, the only thing I'd say, I had 6 brothers, and they were all very good boys. My parents never had a bit of trouble with them. And Dad was one of 8 boys, and none of them ever got into trouble, and they respected their mother and father. He died at 96, and I never heard any of his sons talk angrily with them, or talk back, or argue with, maybe over wrestling. And Dad used to take his father to a wrestling match in Albany years ago, and his father at 96 had all of his teeth but one, and that one he lost when he went to a wrestling match with Dad. And their Dad got all excited, and Grandpa had his pipe in his mouth. He smoked a pipe. So Dad got all excited and waved his arm, knocked the pipe out of his mouth, and the tooth came with it. That's the only tooth he ever lost. You're 90-some years old.
90-something he lived till.
Yeah.
How old was your father when he died?
My father, he was 65. He retired in December. That's when Social Security first came out. He got his check, and he died in June. He was a very hard worker.
Thank you, ma'am, for sharing your time with us. This concludes our interview. I'm Donna Gagnon. Good day.
You're welcome.
Okay.